My name is Diane, and I want to tell you about the day everything changed, not with a fight, not with tears, but with a single question from a man on the other side of a screen. It was a Tuesday morning in March. Our company, Bridgewell Solutions, was hosting a live virtual meeting with Kastner Group, our biggest vendor partner. Everyone who mattered was on that call. Our department head, Mr. Foley, 3 senior managers, and about 12 other staff members. The kind of meeting where people sit up straight and choose their words carefully. I was in the back row of the conference room, laptop open, notepad ready. Nobody had assigned me a seat at the front table. Nobody had asked me to speak. I was just there, the way office furniture is just there, present, useful, and completely ignored. At the front of the room, standing beside the projector screen with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment 100 times, was Cole Weston. Cole was clicking through slides I had built, explaining systems I had designed, using words I had written in a report 3 weeks ago. And everyone in that room was nodding like he was brilliant. I pressed my pen against my notepad and said nothing. Then the vendor paused and asked a question that stopped the whole room cold. The man from Kastner Group was named Mr. Adler. He had sharp eyes and a calm voice, the kind of person who listened more than he talked. He had been quiet for most of Cole's presentation, just watching, nodding occasionally, scribbling notes I couldn't see. Then he leaned forward slightly and said, "I want to understand the data reconciliation layer. Can you walk me through how the flagging threshold was calculated?" The room stayed quiet. It was a very specific question, the kind only someone who had actually built the system would know how to answer without pausing. Cole smiled, that wide, easy smile he always used when he needed to buy himself 3 seconds. "Sure, absolutely," Cole said. "So the threshold is based on, it accounts for the variance in the upstream data feeds, and we built in a buffer to handle the outliers." Mr. Adler did not write anything down. He just looked at Cole steadily. "What percentage buffer? And how was that number decided?" Cole's smile held, but something behind his eyes flickered, like a light bulb that hadn't quite blown out yet, but was getting close. "We ran several tests," Cole said. "The team worked through multiple scenarios." Mr. Adler nodded slowly. His expression hadn't changed, but his pen was still. And I noticed, even from the back of the room, that he was no longer looking at Cole. He was looking at me. Let me take you back 6 months, to September, when this project was nothing but a blank document and a deadline that felt impossible. Mr. Foley had called a department meeting and announced that Bridgewell Solutions had been asked by Kastner Group to build a new data tracking system. It would manage vendor billing across 4 regions. If we delivered something solid, Kastner would renew their contract and possibly expand it. If we failed, we lost one of our biggest clients. "I need a project lead," Mr. Foley said, looking around the room. Cole raised his hand immediately. Cole always raised his hand immediately. Mr. Foley pointed at him. "Cole, you're leading this one." Just like that. I looked down at my notes. I had been at Bridgewell for 4 years. I had built 2 internal reporting systems from scratch. I had cleaned up the data mess left behind by the previous IT vendor. I knew this kind of work better than anyone else in that room. But I hadn't raised my hand. I never raised my hand. Not because I didn't want the work, but because I had always believed that good work would speak for itself eventually. I was wrong about that. I would spend the next 6 months learning exactly how wrong I was. After the meeting, Cole found me in the hallway. "Hey, Diane," he said, easy as breathing. "I'm going to need your help with this." I said yes. Of course I said yes. The first time Cole took one of my ideas, I told myself it was an accident. It was early October. We had a project kickoff meeting with Mr. Foley and 2 of the senior managers. Cole had asked me the night before to send him my notes on how to structure the system architecture. I had typed up 3 pages and emailed them at 9:30 at night. The next morning in the meeting, Cole stood at the whiteboard and laid out the exact same structure I had written. Same 3 phases. Same logic for separating the billing categories. Same suggestion about building a review checkpoint into phase 2. Mr. Foley leaned back in his chair. "That's a smart approach, Cole. Very clean thinking." Cole nodded. "I've been thinking through it carefully. Wanted to make sure we had a solid foundation before we started building." I sat at the table with my coffee going cold in front of me. No one looked at me. No one asked where the plan had come from. After the meeting, I stopped Cole in the hallway. "Those were my notes," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. Cole looked genuinely surprised. Or he played it very well. "I know. You really helped me think it through. That's exactly why I need you on this, Diane. You're brilliant at this stuff." He said it like a compliment, like it should make me feel good. I walked back to my desk and opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it Project Records, and I started saving everything. About 3 weeks into the project, Cole hit a wall. The vendor data files from Kastner's system were coming in with formatting errors that were breaking our import process. It was a messy problem, the kind that requires someone to sit with the raw files, trace the error patterns, and rebuild the import logic from the ground up. Cole sent me a message at 4:15 on a Friday afternoon. "Hey, any chance you can take a look at the import issue? I've been staring at it for 2 hours and I'm going in circles." I stayed until 7:30 that night, alone in the office, eating a granola bar from my desk drawer, working through the file structure line by line. By the time I found the root cause and fixed it, the cleaning staff had already been by twice. I documented everything I did, every step, every fix, every file I touched. I saved it all with timestamps in my project records folder, and I sent Cole a detailed summary email so he would understand what I had done and why. He replied the next morning, "You're a lifesaver, Diane. Seriously, I'll make sure to mention you in the next update to Foley." He used almost those exact words. "I'll mention you next time." I read that message twice. I saved it to my project records folder, and I noticed quietly that being mentioned was not the same as being credited, and being credited was not the same as being recognized. I kept working. I kept saving everything. By November, a pattern had settled in like cold weather, slowly, and then all at once. The project had a shared email thread with Mr. Foley and the 2 senior managers. At first, my name had been included. Then one week, I noticed a thread update I hadn't received. Cole had sent a project status report directly to Mr. Foley without copying me. I only found out because a colleague mentioned it casually over lunch. I checked my inbox carefully. Over the next 2 weeks, I counted 4 separate project emails that had gone to Mr. Foley and the managers, emails about progress, about milestones, about decisions that did not include me. I was still doing the work. I was still fixing problems, building features, testing outputs. But the emails that went upward, the ones that painted a picture of who was driving this project, those emails had my name removed. Cole was becoming the face of the project, not because he had done the most work, but because he had made himself the most visible person attached to it. Mr. Foley started stopping by Cole's desk for updates. He started mentioning Cole in department-wide announcements. He started saying things like Cole's project and Cole's team. I was part of Cole's team. I, who had designed the architecture, fixed the broken import system, and written most of the technical documentation, I was a team member. Something inside me went very quiet and very focused. The company-wide recognition happened on a Thursday morning in December. Mr. Foley sent an all-staff email. The subject line was "Celebrating Project Excellence." In the body of the email, he praised the Kastner project for its strong progress and named Cole specifically as the driving force behind it. He used the phrase Cole's leadership and vision twice. My name was not in the email. Not once. I was sitting at my desk when it came through. I read it once, closed it, and went back to the data validation script I was writing. My hands were steady on the keyboard. My breathing was calm, but something in my chest felt like a door had just been shut and bolted from the other side. By lunchtime, people were stopping by Cole's desk to congratulate him. Someone brought a box of donuts. Someone else taped a small paper sign to his monitor that said Project Star. I walked past his desk on the way to the printer. Cole caught my eye and gave me a small nod, the kind that said thanks and sorry, and this is just how it is, all at the same time. I nodded back. I sat down at my desk, opened my project records folder, and saved a copy of Mr. Foley's email. Then I added a new subfolder. I labeled it Timeline of Authorship. I went back to my script. The donut box was empty by 2 o'clock. I hadn't taken one. That night I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time before driving home. I was not going to cry about this at work. I had made that decision the moment I read Mr. Foley's email. I had been around long enough to understand that crying at work, especially over something like this, would only make me look weak. And I was not weak. I was angry. There is a difference. I thought about walking into Mr. Foley's office the next morning, telling him everything, showing him the emails, the documents, the timestamps, laying it all out on his desk like evidence at a trial. But I had seen what happened to people who did that too early, without enough proof, without the right moment. They got labeled as difficult, as complainers, as people who couldn't be team players. The person doing the wrong thing kept their reputation, and the person telling the truth lost theirs. I needed to be smarter than that. I thought about what I had. For months of documented work, timestamp files, saved emails, a detailed paper trail that showed, clearly and without any drama, who had actually built this system. Not yet, I said to myself in the quiet of that parking garage. I started the car and drove home. I made dinner. I went to bed early. The next morning I was at my desk by 8, coffee in hand, ready to work. January became the month of quiet preparation. Every file I created, I saved in 2 places, the shared project drive and my personal project records folder. Every email I sent with a technical solution, I forwarded to myself. Every meeting where I explained something to Cole, I followed up with a written summary sent to him by email, so there was a record of the information flowing from me to him and not the other way around. I was not doing anything dramatic. I was not confronting anyone. I was simply making sure that the truth had a paper trail long enough to follow. I also started being very precise with my language in written communications. Instead of saying, "We figured out the import issue," I wrote, "I identified and resolved the formatting error in the vendor data import." Instead of, "We designed the flagging system," I wrote, "I built the threshold logic for the data flagging layer." Specific, clear, first person, time-stamped. One evening, while saving a particularly important document, the full technical specification for the reconciliation system, 32 pages written entirely by me, I noticed the file creation date. September 28th. Cole hadn't been named project lead until September 15th. I had started building before he had even officially taken charge. I labeled that document carefully, saved it in 3 separate locations, and made a note in my timeline of authorship folder. Then I went home and slept better than I had in weeks. There was one person at Kastner Group I had spoken to directly, early in the project, before Cole had established himself as the only point of contact. His name was Mr. Adler. He was their lead systems analyst, the person responsible for reviewing whatever we built and deciding whether it met their technical requirements. Back in October, before Cole had started managing all vendor communications, Mr. Foley had asked me to jump on a 30-minute call with Mr. Adler to discuss the system requirements. That call had lasted 90 minutes. We had gone deep into the technical details, data formats, error handling, flagging logic, reconciliation rules. Mr. Adler was precise and knowledgeable, and he asked the kind of questions that showed he actually understood what he was asking about. I had answered every one. At the end of the call, Mr. Adler had said, "This has been very helpful, Diane. You clearly understand the problem well." After that call, Cole had taken over all vendor communication. Mr. Adler's name appeared in emails, but I was never on those emails. I was not on any call with Kastner again until the final presentation in March. But Mr. Adler had not forgotten that October call, and neither had I. I had saved the meeting notes from that call in my project records folder. Date, time, topics discussed, decisions made. Everything. Some things are worth keeping. In February, Cole was given an expanded role. Mr. Foley announced it in a team meeting. Cole would now serve as the client relationship lead for the Kastner account, in addition to his role on the project. It came with a new title on the company directory, a mention in the company newsletter, and a visible shift in how people treated him in the hallways. People who had barely known Cole 6 months ago were now greeting him by name, asking about the project, treating him like someone important. I watched all of this from my desk. I kept my face calm and my thoughts private. The frustrating part was not that Cole was getting attention. The frustrating part was watching how effortlessly attention could be claimed by someone who knew how to stand in the right light, while the person actually building the thing stood in the shadows and kept the whole structure from falling down. I had 3 weeks left on the core build. The reconciliation engine, the most complex part of the entire system, was still not finished. Cole did not know enough about it to finish it. That was simply the truth. He needed me. He just didn't know how to say it without also acknowledging why. He stopped by my desk one afternoon and said, "We're in good shape, right? For the March presentation." I looked at him evenly. "I'll have everything ready." He nodded, relieved, and walked away. I turned back to my screen and kept building. The final 3 weeks of the project were the hardest. The reconciliation engine required precise calibration. The flagging threshold, the exact number that determined when the system would flag a billing discrepancy as an error versus an acceptable variance, had to be tested against hundreds of real data scenarios. Too tight and the system would flag everything, creating noise. Too loose and it would miss actual errors. Finding the right number required running test after test, adjusting, retesting, documenting. I did that work alone, every evening, sometimes past 8 o'clock. Cole would check in during the day, asking for status updates. I would give him clean, simple summaries. Testing is progressing. The threshold logic is stable. We're on track. He would nod and relay those updates to Mr. Foley as if he had generated them himself. One afternoon, Cole sat next to me and watched me run a test cycle. He asked a few questions. His questions told me clearly that he understood the surface of what I was doing, but not the logic underneath it. I answered his questions, politely, completely, and I sent him a follow-up email summarizing everything I had explained, with my name on it and a timestamp. By the end of February, the system was built. It worked. Every component, the import layer, the reconciliation engine, the flagging threshold, the reporting dashboard, all of it worked exactly as designed. I had built it, every piece of it. Cole's preparation for the presentation was something I witnessed from a distance. He spent the last week of February rehearsing. He had printed out my technical summary documents and highlighted sections in yellow. He practiced saying the right phrases, data reconciliation, flagging threshold, variance buffer, with the smooth confidence of someone who had learned the words but not the language. He asked me twice to explain things again so he could make sure he had it right. I explained. He nodded. He wrote bullet points. One afternoon, I heard him rehearsing out loud at his desk, going through the slide deck I had built. He was fluid and confident. He sounded, honestly, like he knew what he was talking about, as long as nobody asked him anything specific. The problem with learning vocabulary without understanding is that it works perfectly until someone asks a follow-up question. Then there is nowhere to go. But Cole didn't seem worried about that. He had never been asked a follow-up question. He couldn't smile his way past. He had built a career on being the most confident person in the room. The day before the presentation, he stopped by my desk one final time. "We're good, right?" "The system is ready," I said. "Perfect." He straightened his jacket. "This is going to be great." He walked away looking like a man who had already won. The night before the presentation, I stayed late again, not to build anything new, but to make sure everything was perfectly in order. I went through my project records folder one final time. The full technical specification document dated September 28th. The import error resolution email dated October 18th. The reconciliation engine test logs dated across November, December, January, and February. The threshold calibration report dated February 24th. Every file had my name on it. Every file had a date. I also checked the notes from my October call with Mr. Adler. 90 minutes. Deep technical discussion. His words at the end. "You clearly understand the problem well." I was not planning to walk into that meeting and expose Cole. I was not going to stand up and make a scene. That was not who I was, and more importantly, that was not the smart move. A scene could be dismissed. Evidence could not. I simply made sure that if a moment came, if the right question was asked by the right person, the truth would be right there, ready to surface on its own. I confirmed that Mr. Adler would be attending the meeting. His name was on the attendee list. I had seen it that morning. I closed my laptop, gathered my things, and drove home. I slept well that night. Surprisingly well. Back to Tuesday morning in March. Back to the conference room. Back to Mr. Adler's steady gaze and Cole's flickering smile. The question about the flagging threshold hung in the air of the conference room, like smoke. Cole had answered it with words that sounded right, but said nothing. And Mr. Adler had not written anything down. Now Mr. Adler leaned forward again. His voice was still calm, still polite, but there was a precision in it that had not been there earlier. Let me ask it differently, he said. The threshold you're using, was it 7.5% or 8%? And how did you land on that specific number? The room was very quiet. Cole's jaw moved slightly. His pen tapped once against the table. We went through extensive testing, he said. The team ran multiple scenarios. I understand there was testing, Mr. Adler said. I'm asking about the specific number and the reasoning behind it. Cole opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I'd have to pull up the detailed documentation to give you the exact figure. Mr. Adler nodded slowly. He turned his gaze across the room, past the senior managers, past Mr. Foley, all the way to the back row, all the way to me. Diane, he said, and the sound of my name in that room, spoken by him in that moment, felt like a window opening after a very long winter. Weren't you the one who worked through the threshold design? Every head in that room turned. I watched it happen almost in slow motion. Mr. Foley turned first, then the two senior managers, then the other staff members, one by one, like a wave rolling from the front of the room to the back, until everyone was looking at me. Cole turned last. His expression was very carefully arranged, smooth, unreadable, but his left hand, resting on the table, had gone very still. I kept my face calm. I had practiced this kind of calm. Not the calm of someone who has nothing to say, but the calm of someone who has been waiting for the right moment to say it. I can answer that, I said. My voice was steady and clear. Cole spoke at the same moment. Diane was part of the testing phase. Cole. Mr. Adler's voice was polite, but firm. He held up one hand, just slightly, just enough. Let her answer. The room went very quiet again. Cole sat back in his chair. One small movement. But I had been watching him for 6 months, and I knew exactly what that movement cost him. I opened my laptop. I had the documentation pulled up already. The threshold calibration report, the test logs, the final recommendation. I had opened them before the meeting started, just in case. Just in case had arrived. Mr. Adler looked at me with the focused attention of someone who already suspected what was true and simply wanted to hear it confirmed. We spoke in October, he said. You and I, about the system requirements. Yes, I said. October 14th. We were on a call for about 90 minutes. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, recognition. You walked me through the data structure that day. The way the billing categories would be separated. That's right. 3 categories, regional, cross-regional, and exception cases, each with its own validation rule. Mr. Adler nodded. He looked down at his notes, then back up at me. And the threshold. Was it you who determined the specific percentage? Yes, I said. The final threshold is 7.5%. I landed on that number after running the system against 214 test cases from Kastner's historical billing data. Anything below 7.5, and we were catching too many acceptable variances. Anything above, and we were missing real errors. 7.5 gave us a 96.3% accuracy rate on confirmed discrepancies. I said those numbers from memory because I had lived with them for weeks. They were not numbers I had read in someone else's document. They were numbers I had found myself through the kind of repetitive, careful, unglamorous work that most people never see. Mr. Adler wrote something down. For the first time since his questions had started, he was writing. The power in that room did not shift loudly. It shifted the way temperature shifts, gradually, and then you notice it all at once and you realize the whole room feels different. Mr. Foley was looking at me with an expression I had not seen from him before. It was the expression of a man who is quietly recalculating something important. His eyes moved from me to Cole, then back to me, then down to the table. The two senior managers exchanged a glance. Just a quick one, but I caught it. Cole sat with his hands flat on the table. His presentation slides were still up on the screen behind him. My slides. He was sitting in front of my work, in front of my words, and the room had just watched him fail to answer a specific question about it. He tried to recover. He leaned forward slightly and said Diane's work on the testing was a key part of the project. She was instrumental. Cole. Mr. Foley's voice was quiet. Not angry, just quiet in a way that stopped conversation. Let's let Mr. Adler finish. Cole leaned back again. Twice now he had been asked to stop talking, in a room full of people who had watched him talk confidently for the last 40 minutes. Mr. Adler looked at me and said simply, "Can you walk me through the reconciliation engine? In your own words." And I did. I walked Mr. Adler through the reconciliation engine the way I had built it, from the beginning, layer by layer, in plain and careful language. I explained how the import process worked, how the data was cleaned and structured before it reached the reconciliation layer, and how the engine compared vendor records against internal billing records line by line. I explained the logic for handling missing fields, duplicate entries, and time zone discrepancies in the timestamps. I explained why I had built a manual review queue for the edge cases that the automated flagging couldn't resolve cleanly. I explained everything, not because I was trying to prove something, but because Mr. Adler was asking real questions, and I had real answers. Halfway through my explanation, Cole tried to add something. And we also considered. Mr. Adler glanced at him briefly. "I'll come back to you, Cole." "Diane, continue, please." Cole went silent. I continued. I answered 2 more follow-up questions from Mr. Adler, both specific, both technical, both answered without hesitation. By the time I finished, the room was completely still. Mr. Adler looked at his notes for a moment. Then he looked up and said, "This is exactly what we needed. The design is solid." He paused. I have to be honest, I was not sure coming into this meeting that the system would meet our requirements. I'm confident now that it does. He said it looking at me. Mr. Foley spoke before anyone else could. "Diane, do you have documentation on the system build? A full record of the development process?" "Yes," I said. I did not hesitate. "I can share the complete project file, technical specifications, test logs, development records, and a timeline of all major decisions. Everything is time-stamped." I said time-stamped clearly and without drama. But I watched Mr. Foley register the word. "How far back do the timestamps go?" he asked. "The first technical specification document is dated September 28th, I said. 2 weeks after the project kickoff. There was a silence in the room that felt different from all the other silences. Cole shifted in his chair. It was a small movement, but in a room this quiet, small movements were loud. Mr. Adler looked across the table. "Cole, the threshold calculation Diane described, can you confirm that process?" Cole's mouth opened. He looked at the table, then at the screen, then at his hands. "The testing process involved the full team," he said carefully. "Diane was doing a lot of the technical heavy lifting." "A lot of it," Mr. Adler repeated. "Or all of it?" The silence that followed that question was the loudest thing I had heard in months. Mr. Foley looked at Cole the way you look at something you thought you understood and are now seeing differently. "Cole," he said. His voice was measured, controlled. The voice of someone choosing words carefully because there were people from outside the company in the room. "Walk me through your specific contributions to the system build." Cole straightened in his chair. He was good under pressure, I had to give him that. He did not panic visibly. He gathered himself and answered in the confident, organized way he always answered things. He talked about managing the project timeline, coordinating between departments, leading the communication with Kastner, making decisions about priorities when deadlines were tight. These were real things. Project management was real work. Nobody was saying otherwise. But he did not mention the architecture. He did not mention the import fix. He did not mention the reconciliation engine, or the threshold calibration, or the 32-page technical specification, because he could not explain those things in detail. And Mr. Foley, who was now listening with a different kind of attention, noticed what was missing. And the technical build. Mr. Foley asked. The actual system design? Cole looked at the table. Diane handled the technical execution. Handled the technical execution, Mr. Foley said slowly. He repeated phrases when he wanted time to think. What does that mean specifically? The question just sat there. Cole had no clean answer. Mr. Adler, who had been quiet for a moment, said calmly, "It might be helpful to review the documentation Diane mentioned." I shared my screen. I opened the project records folder and walked through it systematically. I did not rush. I did not editorialize. I simply showed what was there. The technical specification document. September 28th. My name in the document header. My writing, from the first line to the last. The import error resolution report. October 18th. A detailed explanation of the problem I had found and the fix I had implemented, sent to Cole by email. The reconciliation engine development log. Entries from November through February. Each one dated. Each one describing what I had built or tested or adjusted that day. The threshold calibration report. February 24th. 214 test cases. The final recommendation of 7.5%. My name at the top. I went through it calmly, like someone reading a list of facts. Because that was what it was. A list of facts. Documented. Time-stamped. Clear. When I finished, the room was completely silent. Cole had not interrupted once. I think he understood in that moment that interrupting would only make things worse. There was nothing he could add that would change what was on the screen. Mr. Foley stared at the final document for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Cole, why wasn't I enlisted as the technical lead on this project?" There was no good answer to that question. The meeting wrapped up 20 minutes later. Mr. Adler confirmed that Kastner Group was satisfied with the system and would move forward with the contract renewal. He was professional and warm about it, and he directed most of his final comments to me. After the call ended, the conference room emptied slowly. People found reasons to leave quickly. The particular way people move when they sense that something uncomfortable is about to happen, and they would rather not be present for it. Cole left without saying anything to me. He walked to the door, straight-backed and quiet, and did not turn around. Mr. Foley asked me and Cole to stay. The three of us sat in the empty conference room. Mr. Foley looked tired in the way people look when they have just realized they made a significant mistake and are measuring the size of it. He asked Cole directly whether he had presented himself as the primary creator of the system. Cole said he had managed the project and led the presentation. Mr. Foley said that was not what he had asked. The conversation was not loud. Nobody raised their voice. But it was one of the most uncomfortable 20 minutes I had ever sat through, and I was not even the one being questioned. At the end of it, Mr. Foley looked at me and said, "Diane, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not a company memo apology. A real one." I nodded. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that." 2 days after the meeting, Mr. Foley called me into his office. He sat across from me and told me that Cole's expanded role as client relationship lead was being reviewed. He did not give me specifics about what would happen, and I did not ask. That was not my business to manage. What he said next was, "I've spoken with the leadership team," Mr. Foley said. "We'd like to offer you the role of technical project lead for the Kastner account going forward. You'd be the primary point of contact on all technical matters and the lead on any new system development they request." It was the kind of offer I had deserved 6 months ago, maybe longer than that. I also told him calmly that I had been approached through Mr. Adler, who had followed up with me by email the day after the meeting, about a potential consulting opportunity directly with Kastner Group. They were building an internal analytics team and wanted to talk about whether I would be interested in joining in a senior technical capacity. Mr. Foley was quiet for a moment. "That's a significant opportunity," he said. "Yes," I said. "It is." He looked at me steadily. "What are you thinking?" I looked back at him just as steadily. "I'm thinking about it carefully," I said. "I'd like a few days." He nodded. "Of course." I thanked him and walked out of his office. For the first time in a long time, I had more than one door open in front of me, and I was the one who would choose which one to walk through. I gave myself a week to decide. I thought about it the way I think about complex problems, methodically, honestly, without letting emotion make the choice for me. I wrote a list. I asked myself the real questions. Not what feels good, but what is actually true. What was true was that Bridgewell Solutions had not seen me for 4 years. They had seen my output. They had relied on my work. But they had not seen me. Not until someone from outside the company pointed directly at me and asked a question I was the only one who could answer. I also thought about what Mr. Adler had said in his follow-up email. Your work on this system was exceptional. We would be glad to have that kind of thinking inside Kastner. I accepted Kastner's offer. I gave Bridgewell 3 weeks' notice. I wrote a thorough handover document because that is the kind of person I am, regardless of what has happened. And I trained the colleague who would take over my responsibilities. On my last day, I packed my desk into a single cardboard box. Laptop, charger, one framed photo, my coffee mug. I did not take the world's best analyst mug someone had given me as a joke gift at the last Christmas party, because it had always felt like it belonged to someone else's idea of who I was. Cole was not in the office that day. I carried my box to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby, and rode down in the quiet. My name is Diane. For 4 years, I was the invisible backbone of a team that forgot I had a spine. I don't work there anymore, and I have never felt more like myself.